Let me tell everyone what Mistborn is. Okay, here it is. Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn is an epic fantasy series set on the planet Scadrial, primarily known for its original trilogy. The story centers on a rebellion against a tyrannical Lord Ruler, which is his name, and his oppressive final empire. The first book, Mistborn: The Final Empire, was published in 2006. If I remember correctly, there's 7 books right now, but we are going to get started on Mistborn. If you guys want to read the book after, that is up to you. It is like a 500-page book, and it was so much fun being able to read it on plane rides whenever I had the time. But yeah, so I think with the 10 minutes that we're allowed, I'm going to be able to read the prologue. God, I'm already getting nervous. I've read a book to a class before, but yeah. So this is before the prologue. Sometimes I worry that I'm not the hero everyone thinks I am. The philosophers assure me that this is the time, that signs have been met, but I still wonder if they have the wrong man. So many people depend on me. They say I will hold the future of the entire world on my arms. What would they think if they knew that their champion, the hero of ages, their savior, doubted himself? Perhaps they wouldn't be shocked at all. In a way, this is what worries me most. Maybe in their hearts they wonder, just as I do. When they see me, do they see a liar? This is the start of the prologue. Ash fell from the sky. Lord Tresting frowned, glancing up at the ruddy midday sky as his servant scuttled forward, opening a parasol over Tresting and his distinguished guest. Ash falls weren't that uncommon in the Final Empire, but Tresting had hoped to avoid getting soot stains on his new suit coat and red vest, which had just arrived via canal boat from Luthadel. Fortunately, there wasn't much wind. The parasol would likely be effective. Tresting stood with his guest on a small hilltop patio that overlooked the fields. Hundreds of people in brown smocks worked in the fallen ash, caring for the crops. There was a sluggishness to their efforts, but of course that was the way of the Ska. The peasants were an indolent, unproductive lot. They didn't complain. They knew better than that. Instead, they simply worked with bowed heads, moving about their work with quiet apathy. The passing whip of a taskmaster would force them into delicate motion for a few moments, but as soon as the taskmaster moved on, they would return to their languor. Or languor. It's Languor. Tresting turned to the man standing beside him on the hill. One would think, Tresting noted, that 1,000 years of work in the fields would have bred them to be a little more effective at it. The obligator turned, raising an eyebrow, the motion done as if to highlight his most distinctive feature, the intricate tattoos that laced the skin around his eyes. The tattoos were enormous, reaching all the way across his brow and up the sides of his nose. There was a full prelen, a very important obligator indeed. Tresting had his own personal obligators back at the manor, but they were only minor functionaries, with barely a few marks around their eyes. This man had arrived from Luthadel with the same canal boat that had brought Tresting's new suit. You should see City Ska, Tresting. Oh, my bad. You should see City Ska, Tresting, the obligator said, turning back to watch the Ska workers. These are actually quite diligent compared to those inside Luthadel. You have more direct control over your Ska here. How many would you say you lose a month? Oh, half a dozen or so, Tressing said. Some to beatings, some to exhaustion. Runaways? Never, Tressing said. When I first inherited this land from my father, I had a few runaways, but I executed their families. The rest quickly lost heart. I never understood men who had troubles with their ska. I find the creatures easy to control, if you show a properly firm hand. The obligator nodded, standing quietly in his gray robes. He seemed pleased, which was a good thing. The ska weren't actually Tresting's property. Like all ska, they belonged to the Lord Ruler. Tresting only leased the workers from his god, much in the same way he paid for the services of his obligators. The obligators looked down, checking his pocket watch, then glanced up at the sun. Despite the ashfall, the sun was bright this day, shining a brilliant crimson behind the smoky blackness of the upper sky. Tresting removed a handkerchief and wiped his brow, thankfully for the parasol's shade against the midday heat. Very well, Tresting, the obligator said. I will carry your proposal to Lord Venture, as requested. He will have a favorable report from me on your operation here. Tresting held in a sigh of relief. An obligator was required to witness any contract of business deal between noblemen. True, even a lowly obligator like ones Tresting had engaged could serve as such a witness, but it meant so much more to impress Straff Venture's own obligator. The obligator turned towards him. I'll leave down the canal this afternoon. So soon? Tresting asked. Would you care to stay for supper? No, the obligator replied. Though there is another matter I wish to discuss with you. Came not only at the behest of Lord Venture, but to look into some matters for the Canton of Inquisition. Rumors say that you like to dally with your ska women. Tresting felt a chill. The obligator smiled. He likely meant it to be disarming, but Tresting only found it eerie. Don't worry yourself, Tresting, the obligator said. If there had been any real worries about your actions, a Steel Inquisitor would have been sent here in my place. Tresting nodded, slowly. Inquisitor. He'd never seen one of the inhuman creatures, but he had heard stories. I've been satisfied regarding your actions with ska woman, the obligator said, looking back over the fields. What I've seen and heard here indicate that you always clean up your messes. A man such as you, efficient, productive, could go far in Luthadel. A few more years of work, some inspired mercantile deals, and who knows? The obligator turned away, and Tresting found himself smiling. It wasn't a promise, or even an endorsement for the most part. Obligators were more bureaucrats and witnesses than they were priests, but to hear such praise from one of the Lord Ruler's own servants, Tresting knew that some nobility regarding the obligators as unsettling. Some even considered them a bother. But at that moment, Tresting could have kissed his distinguished guest. Tresting turned back towards the ska, who worked quietly beneath the bloody sun and the lazy flakes of ash. Tresting had always been a country nobleman, living on his plantation, dreaming of perhaps moving into Luthadel itself. He had heard of the balls and the parties, the glamour and the intrigue, and it excited him to no end. I'll have to celebrate tonight, he thought. There was that young girl in the 14th hovel that he'd been watching for some time. That still creeps me out. That still creeps me out. He smiled again. A few more years of work, the obligator had said, but could Tresting perhaps speed that up? If he worked a little harder, his ska population had been growing lately. Perhaps if he pushed them a bit more, he could bring in an extra harvest this summer and fulfill his contract with Lord Venture in extra measure. Tresting nodded as he watched the crowd of lazy ska, some working with their hoes, others on hands and knees, pushing the ash away from the fledgling crops. They didn't complain. They didn't hope. They barely dared think. That was the way it should be, for they were Ska. They were... Tressing froze as one of the Ska looked up. The man met Tressing's eyes. A spark. No. A fire of defiance showing in his expression. Tressing had never seen anything like it, not in the face of a Ska. Tressing stepped backwards reflexively, a chill running through him as the strange, straight black Ska held his eyes, and smiled. Tressing looked away. "Curtain!" he snapped. The burly taskmaster rushed up the incline. "Yes, my lord?" Tressing turned, pointing at... He frowned. Where had the Ska been standing? Working with their heads bowed, bodies stained by soot and sweat, they were so hard to tell apart. Tressing paused, searching. He thought he knew the place, an empty spot where nobody now stood. But no, there couldn't be. The man couldn't have just disappeared from the group so quickly. Where would he have gone? He must be in there somehow, working with his head now properly bowed. Still, his moment of apparent defiance was inexcusable. "My lord?" Kuden asked again. The obligator stood at the side, watching curiously. It would not be wise to let the man know that one of the Ska had acted so brazenly. Work with the Skas that the southern section, work with the Ska in that southern... Bleh. Thank you. Work with the Ska in that southern section a little harder, Tressing ordered, pointing. I see them being sluggish, even for Ska. Beat a few of them. Curtin shrugged, but nodded. It wasn't much of a reason for a beating. But then he didn't need much of a reason to give the workers a beating. They were, after all, only Ska. And if I remember correctly, that is not the end of the prologue. But that also kind of gave you an inkling of how this book is going to go. So, to kind of give a recap, we are having one of the technical peoples that want to be a nobleman, Tressing, working his workforce, aka slaves. In this world, Ska are seen as low people, whereas those of nobility are seen even better. There are characters known as Mistborn that have specific magic, and they are met with more fealty and everything. It works about nobility, it works about rebellion, but that is a small snippet of Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn.